Broken by starvation and poverty, while the iron masters sip their wine, we young and old together marched for justice, but the bayonet and the bullets what they find. And bread or blood, cried a collier, we come too far lads now to run. But in our Merthyr town in 1831, they were cut down by the government guns.
Hello listeners, welcome to another edition of Tales for Wales, the pod that never ever ever fails to inform, entertain, enthrall, and I can't remember any other words we used on the last couple of intros. Engorge, get people nice and fucking rock hard, tight in the pants. I'm Jack, and as usual, I'm joined by my friend of many a decade, Franco. Today we're going to be talking about Dic Penderyn. I can't think of a dick joke right now, but I'm sure I will later. Before that, though, what have you been up to, mate?
Dick joke. You're coming up short with that one, just like in the bedroom.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah. You didn't have to go so personal, but yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Spoken to Amy. I hope that's all getting better, mate.
I texted before this. It's completely backed up by fact.
I've got the cold hard evidence here.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to see it, just at us, then I'll fucking tweet the pics.
You asked what I've been up to. I had one of those moments today that is that every work shy piece of work fears. I had like my work's been quite quiet, so I actually asked my boss. I was like, "Oh, is there anything else I can do today? Like, I'm looking for work." And
you fucking bum.
Yeah, I know. Well, the thing is, we get marked for like you have to. Every client we work with, you kind of have to put your hours against it. So if it comes like, "What do you do today?" I played quite a lot of Ghost of Tsushima. So I did
that
ask
wouldn't
him,
be time well. That would be time well spent, in my opinion. But yeah.
Well, I usually just ask for something that's quite easy, and I'll spend longer than I need to on it. But anyway, so he said, "Oh, actually, no, there's not an awful lot. We're waiting for something big to come in." So as I was waiting around, it got to about 5 o'clock, and a client messaged us and said, "Oh, hey, can you help with this?" And then I got called onto a call with like 4 other people. So there's 5 of us on the call, and I literally the minute the call started, I just switched off. And I started daydreaming. I was looking through Sky about what I was going to watch with our food, and it's like chopping.
Hashtag relatable.
It's what the people want. The people know this. And I was like, I even powered up the PlayStation, and it got about 15 minutes in, and everyone on the call was really
powered up the console in prep. Like, I know I'm not going to last at least 10 minutes, so I might as well get a game loaded up ready.
And it was like 5 o'clock, and I meant to finish at 5:30. So I thought, well, what's going to be happening here? But the call went on for about 20 minutes, so it was like 20 past 5. And then I started thinking, oh, everyone seems really amped up, and like something big's just happened.
I'd be brooding at this point. I'd be going, oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah, so I turned off the PlayStation again. It only just powered up, which was annoying. But I put it to a side, and I thought, oh, I should probably start like listening. And then it was quite like it sounded quite heavy. And then I thought like with about 5 minutes left of the call, I started writing notes furiously because I knew what was going to happen, and it did happen. And they went, Frank, are you happy to reply back to the client then with what we just discussed? And I was like, what?
I would be if I had any idea what you'd just been discussing.
But then, this is what I think everyone's just blagging, like just pure blagging, because I literally didn't listen to it. And I'm not being bravado, I wasn't listening. I was just a bit tired, a bit lazy, just not on my game today. And when they said the only thing I noted down was like 2 things. It said, "Oh, it's not about the size of the company; it's the size of the audience." And I thought I pin in my entire response on that phrase.
Such a fucking platitude there. There's just absolutely nothing of substance. You're like, yeah, this is enough to work with.
So that was literally that sentence. Was like, I'm going to craft this entire response, and I was looking at who was on the call, who else was on the call. So I'd be like, if I got a friend on the call, I could message being like, "Dude, what the fuck was that? Can you help me?" But then, they're all lovely, but they weren't really the kind of people I'd go to saying, "Hey, I'm an idiot, so can you help me?" So I said, "Oh yeah, sure, guys, I'll write it up. Can I send it to someone just to double check to make sure I've captured what we've all just discussed?"
Oh, the classic, yeah.
So I just sent an email back saying it's not the size of the company, it's the size of the audience. No, and I blagged it, and I read through his email, and I tried to pitch together what it might be, and I sent it on to someone. And when you see what my draft was compared to what we sent to the client, it was appalling. Mine was like a scribbled piece of paper with dribble on it.
It's like classic going, so this is what I've come up with. It's it's not the size of the audience, it's the size of the company, or whatever it was, whichever way around. Could be wrong way around.
Yeah, imagine I get the wrong way around.
Yeah, no worries, but you did actually miss like the 6 major points. You go, oh, did I? Oh, bloody, what am I like? And then you just note them down. Thanks, that's my job done.
The first part of the call, I was sat there thinking, I was having like bad hay fever at the time, or like sneezing. I think like the dog just came too close to me or something. But I do sneezes where you go like that, you stop.
The ones that could fucking knock your eyes out if you don't close them. Yeah.
I then went on like a 2-minute because I got ADHD as well, so it's quite hard to do any trails of thoughts. I started then just thinking about
wheeling out all the bloody excuses for this one, didn't you?
And I also had a bad relationship with my dad.
And I got ADHD, and actually, I've been going through a lot lately.
And I got a problem with my weight, and my dad never said he loved me. Yeah, so I then started thinking, oh, what if I stopped, because I don't let any sneeze out, I just go like that. What if it impacts my brain, and my brain just one day goes poof, explodes? And I was like, oh shit.
The ultimate sneeze comes out because you've been building them up all your life. So let's just get the one mega sneeze, and you fucking, head explodes.
And then because I went to the gym today, and I told you I was doing rowing. And rowing's fucking, it's good. I've been doing,
mate.
Oh, it's hard. And we used to do it when we used to gym together, didn't we?
Yeah, but I used to hate those days.
I've been doing weights for fucking ages, and they're fine. I'm good at doing weights, but you don't lose weight by doing weights. You just you have nice arms and a fat tummy. So it's like, I should probably do something about the rest of my body. And then I started picturing if one day I was rowing, my arms get stuck on the row thing, they just come off, and I have no more arms. The only thing I like about my body. And it was just all whilst I was yabbering on about some client work.
Popped out of the fucking shoulders like a fucking Ken doll, and you don't get it. That's it then. Yeah. Oh well, yeah. That's fair enough. That does sound pretty horrible. I've been in that situation before where you just go, "Oh, this is a meeting I don't have to pay attention to." Yeah. And more often than not, especially in my work, they do the meeting and go, "Look, we'll send the summary around afterwards." It's like, don't invite me to the meeting. I'll just read the summary. Actually, I probably won't even read the summary. But
why have you employed me?
Yeah, why'd you pay me? But if someone goes, oh, have you done that thing we asked you to do the meeting, then I can quickly Google in Outlook, you know what I mean, search in Outlook, some keywords, and go, right, that's what I was meant to do. So yeah, it's not nice to be in that situation, but they don't make it nice, do they? I was going to mention I've been on a speed awareness course.
Have you?
Yeah. So do you know we went on a little some keen-eared listeners might remember when we mentioned a weekend away with the guys and gals down in Devon. When was that? That was a few months ago now, wasn't it? Anyway, February, yeah. So I'm pretty, for the listeners who don't know, I'm a pretty slow driver. I'm pretty granny-ish. Cautious Carol, not the most confident, very granny-ish driver. I'm always at the speed limit or lower. The one time I fucking went over the speed limit, I was on a motorway, I did 80 and a 70, right? That I feel like there's more people doing 80 on the motorway than there isn't, right?
You only should do 80 on the motorway.
Yeah, 70 is too slow for the motorway, even I think that, right? And some fucking Devonshire policeman got me, some fucking clotted cream shagging cunt, fucking, no, I'm not bitter, had me. And so I had to do this bloody thing. At first I thought, they're not going to make me go back to Devon, are they? And make me do this in a fucking office somewhere. Thankfully it was all over Zoom or whatever. And it was exactly what you expect. Just the most boring thing in the world. It's the most obvious shit. But I had this Yorkshire woman on there teaching us, you know what I mean? It's very fucking straightforward. She was like, right, sign in front of you, it says 40. What speed you do? And he'd be like,
42.
40, and she goes, right, yes, exactly right, smart lad, right.
You go far, you little lad, right.
Yeah, I know I'm not doing a woman's voice, I can't do a woman's voice in Yorkshire, this is I'll have to do. And
yeah, really good.
Oh, very, very good. And then the next question would go, right, now, you see 50, what's 50? How fast you go? And you go, 50, and then you go, right, exactly right, again, yes, big tick for you. And all of a sudden, it was basically that all the way through. And there was like little bits like, she'd go, she'd catch someone on her phone, she's like, Sandra, I don't mean to be, I don't like to do this. I do not like to do this. But if I see you on your phone, I'm going to have to kick you out. I don't want to fucking do it, Sandra. I'd rather claw my own fucking eyes out than kick you out of this. But if you see you on your phone again, I'm going to have to kick you out. And it was like, okay, so fucking militant. You have to have your camera on. I'm used to someone seeing my little profile pic on Zoom calls, and I can fucking just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
But they got that watching you like a hawk. Yeah, it was just lots of that. And then it's obviously been tailored, so you can't just zone out and be, looking into the distance. It's glassy-eyed on this thing. Because they go through one by one and go like, oh, so what did you think of that then? What did you think of that? And it's like, oh, you have to think of something.
Yeah.
And they go, what? And at the end they're like, oh, what was the most interesting thing you found about this then, Jack? And I was like, I don't know. That's like fucking in my head. I was like, I don't know. It's asking me like what my fucking favourite cloud I've ever seen is or something like that. Like, how can I answer this? I've been so fucking uninterested the entire time. But the best thing is you can give a bullshit answer, and they'll just have to accept it. And they're like, there we are. Then you're at the end. You haven't got your 3 points or whatever. And it was just a bit like, when you think it's like a waste of time.
Oh,
like,
you're not going to tell us what your favourite moment was.
I can if you really want.
Of course, everyone's dying for this.
Okay, did you know that they showed a video, right, and it was like, this is a car stopping at 30, and they marked where it stopped on this runway. If you hit me at 20
miles, I'd be dead as a doorknob.
They did. This Yorkshireman did say things like, you hit a kid at fucking 20 mile an hour, right? You'll be alright. You'll be right.
She'll be alright.
And then he's like, him at 80, he's fucking dead, yeah? Fucking dead.
Fucking brown, you know that, right? You fucking disgust me, you do.
Yeah.
You go around fucking hitting kids all day long.
Speeding bastards.
Speeding bastard liars.
But yeah, so I won't bother finishing what my most interesting thing was, because it is not interesting.
No.
It's basically just, do the speed limit. I knew it was going to be that, but it's one of those things where, like, most of the people, I mean, I'm not a fast driver anyway, but anyone who is a fast driver isn't going to change their habits.
But do you remember you used to have to do them in person?
Oh yeah, no, if they'd made me do that, I'd have just said, give me the points. I'd rather the points
give me
than
the
go
bullet,
fucking
mate.
do that.
Shoot me the fucking
I'd say, I'll take my fucking license away. Do me a favour, fella. Take my fucking license away.
Well, talking of taking away someone's license,
ooh,
kind of a segue. Today we're going to discuss Dic Penderyn, but more so, actually, it's going to be the Merthyr Risings or the Merthyr Riots. I was saying to Jack before we started this, this has been my most interest. So I'm doing most of the bulk of the research for this one, and I'm going to tell you about it. I'm sure most of you know lots about it, but this is the most interested I've ever been researching any of our stuff. I thought it was like fascinating, crazy, cinematic. Like it just feels like crazy, because all I ever knew was that, spoilers, Dic Penderyn was the last man in Wales to be hung, and I kind of thought, well, that was it, and he's involved in a kerfuffle.
Yeah, it's even I, in my limited research, because I know you're doing the bulk of it for this one, but my limited research, like you said, you could easily make a film out of this, couldn't you? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It'd be so easily done.
I whilst doing it, I spent a long time doing a bit more notes on this. I think we're both going to try and do a bit more thorough research going forward, aren't we? With topics you can do, the areas that you can cover that have more notes. And this I had loads of notes, but we're not going to make it fucking dull and boring. It's not really our style to get bogged down in detail. No,
because if it's boring, we get bored and we're like, I don't know, I just loved it. I thought it was a really, really, really interesting one. So without much further ado, let's get involved and tell you a tale from Wales. I'll just say before you start, mate, the reason that I did a bit of research on this, and then I remember texting you, and you said, "Oh, it's okay, mate. I'm doing like all the bulk of this. You can just do like little observations or whatever." And it's because and I'm not proud of this. I started doing my first load of notes on Dic Turpin because I'd forgotten what we were talking about. I knew it was Dick something, and I was like, "Oh, what is it, Dic Turpin?" And I remember I googled it, and I started writing a bit, and I went English highwayman, and I was like, that can't be right. We wouldn't have picked that. And I was going through it for a bit, and then when you text back then going like, oh, I'm doing the bulk of it on Dic Penderyn, I was like, that makes more sense. Makes a hell of a lot more sense.
You can give us a roundup on Dic Turpin at the end if you like.
I didn't even get that far because I saw English and I thought, is that something we cover?
Right. So like I said, it's going to cover a bit of Dic Penderyn, but really it's going to focus on the Merthyr riots. And they're also I only call them Merthyr Risings because I think riots has got connotations that I don't quite agree with. So the build-up, I'll start with the build-up. So this here's a brief bit of actual history. During the Industrial Revolution, which spanned from 1760 to around 1840, iron masters developed mines for coals and iron production. But then as the demand for these materials increased, the iron masters became mega rich. However, like Liz Truss found out, trickle-down economics doesn't quite work, and as the iron masters got richer, the working conditions of the workers didn't follow suit. In fact, they got much worse. So all these really big, rich iron masters had these great big mines and stuff, and they were getting fucking big bucks. But then the workers would end up getting the fucking short end of the shovel.
I don't believe that, mate. I don't believe that capitalism could ever.
It's woke
turn that
culture
way.
that's making
that's woking stuff, mate, and I won't have that on the pod.
So workers ended up having to work longer hours, and there were very few holidays or days off, and there was no sort of sick leave. And there were also massive real dangers of the job, such as like collapsed mines and something called iron splash, which is when molten iron would splash back and burn the workers. And if that happened to you, you wouldn't get much compensation, if any.
That's fucking rough.
Yeah,
and certainly something I've never heard. Iron splash doesn't sound great.
Pretty, yeah. And then consequently as well, the living conditions were equally as shit. They had loads of cheap houses built next to these mines by the iron masters, where the workers were crammed in together with very little sanitation and clean water. And as a result, there was an epidemic of cholera and typhoid and a devastatingly sad high infant death rate. Houses were really poor quality, and they were built out of sandstone, which led to damp and resulted in respiratory problems. And also, workers would sometimes be paid in a system known as the truck system. And the truck, in this sense, is relating to the isn't relating to a car, but it's relating to the Old English word meaning exchange or barter.
I did read. Yeah, this is one thing I did happen upon, and it was you didn't get paid money, you get paid in like provisions and things like that.
The truck system was a way of iron masters. They don't actually have to pay their workers in money, but instead give them tokens to use at the iron masters' own shops, which are called truck shops or Tommy shops. And the prices of these goods in the truck shops tend to be way higher than they would be in ordinary shops. Plus, they'd be much lower quality. So it's like me giving you £10 worth of credit in my store, and my bananas are £9 worth of credit. Well, next door they're only £5, and they're shit bananas. So
fucking £9 shit bananas. That's you don't want that, do you?
That's the way we're going now, don't it? Some of the iron masters and the industrialists who owned these ironworks would make great contributions to the places that homed their workers and mines. So in Merthyr, there was one influential ironmaster, Josiah John Guest, who was the owner of Doilice. He built a library, a chapel, and like schools and stuff like that for his workers and those who lived there. Then on the flip side, in 1825, we had William Crashaw. He owned Cyfarthfa and was one of the wealthiest men in the United Kingdom. And he's one of the wealthiest men that's ever been in the United Kingdom. He'd like now and then. He's been unparalleled for how rich he was. So when this other guy, Josiah John Guest, decided to build libraries, chapels and schools, William Crashaw, he built a castle for himself overlooking his works. So when all these people lived in these shit houses, he built a literal castle. So these displays of wealth from the ironmasters reflected the divide between the situations of the working class and the wealthy upper class. So I mean, you got on one hand, you got a man who's built a literal castle for himself to look at his workers, whilst on the other side, the workers are losing their children due to the poverty they're forced to live in. So that takes us then to 1831. And this week we're going to look at what happens when you push the workers to the brink and what happens to a society when the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And we're going to look at the story of Dic Penderyn and the Merthyr Rising.
Yeah, revolution, baby.
Revolution. So as I said, the Industrial Revolution started in 1760 and lasted up till around 1840. And then we're going to focus on Merthyr Tydfil, especially in this year 1831, which many see as the start of the end of the industrial period. And in 1831, much of the towns and villages across the industrial South Wales were in the midst of an upheaval of political and social unrest. But Merthyr was especially defiant, angry and hard done by. There are already awful working conditions in the mines and ironworks, mixed with appallingly low wages for such a dangerous job. Now the wages were being cut, and in some cases there were mass layoffs as demand for coal and iron fell away. A couple of years earlier, in 1829, there was economic depression fueled by this fall for iron, which pushed up the prices of goods and greatly affected the cost of living, something us poor sods know all too well at the moment.
Oh, yes.
Its families were working really hard and having very little to show for it, which resulted in many people falling into debt. And then when families couldn't pay that debt, the Court of Requests would keep records of who was owing and send bailiffs around to seize the goods. And in Merthyr, these people fucking hated these debtors and bailiffs.
I can imagine not a lot of people were very chummy with them.
No, yeah, some can't come around and collect. Well, you're working until you're fucking working to the bone.
Yeah, getting fucking splashed with fucking molten metal and iron splash, and then someone goes, "You owe me fucking £5."
Yeah, so the people of Merthyr were determined to get parliamentary reform. Yeah, as at the time there was all these rotten boroughs, and Merthyr didn't actually have any representation in Parliament. So the big thing the workers wanted was to have someone represent them and improve their working conditions. So they didn't even have a voice in Parliament, and they were being massively hard done by these iron masters. So this led to a unions being like a vital part of giving workers a voice. You know, like everyone always says how much unions are important now. The reason we have maternity leave, sick pay, holidays is because of these unions.
Because of all the work they've done in the past,
Yeah, and these unions, such as the Colliers Union, they try to strengthen their position in Merthyr, and they seem to have this was contributing to this uprising that was happening. Prior to the rising, there was a mass meeting of iron workers held at Wine Common on the 30th of May. You can open that pop, I can hear you fucking...
Yeah, I'm trying to be quiet with it, yeah, no worries. I'll just visit all in one. There you go. You'll be fuming, it's not even nice pop, it's fucking co-op shit.
You always have shit then. I'll keep all this in.
Yeah, why not?
Prior to the rising, a mass meeting of ironworkers was held at Wine Common on 30th of May 1831, and this was considered the largest political meeting of workers ever held in Wales. And this reflected the prevalence of the workers that were joining the organisation. Due to the effects of the economic depression, that Crawshaw bloke I mentioned earlier, he announced he was going to be cutting wages of the Cyfarthfa ironworkers, which led to this massive meeting. They were like, fuck this. We can't cut our wages anymore.
I love that. We're not really happy with things that are going on. I tell you what, make them suffer harder. That's always a good thing.
And Merthyr is one of those towns that grew massively due to these things. You know, people were kind of brought in to live there, and then when they kind of butchered the earth for all it was worth, they kind of left it. You know, there's a duty of you. If you earn all this money from the land, you should look after the people who did it. And aside from these wage cuts, the situation was exacerbated when Crawshaw sacked 84 puddlers. Briefly, an iron puddler was a worker in an iron manufacturer who specialised in puddling, which sounds mad, but it's the improved process of converting pig iron into raw iron with the use of a reverberatory furnace. But anyway, you work as a two-man crew. And a puddler and a helper could produce around 15 tons an hour, but you work 12-hour shifts, and it's unbelievably hard.
Jesus.
It's hard done by low pay, but it's something that quite a few people did up there, and he sacked off 84 of them, which was a big part of the community. So it made a big part of the community now unemployed, and the town was absolutely enraged by this. So coupled with the grievances they were already experiencing, the people in Merthyr were really pissed off, and so began the Merthyr Rising. Now I'm going to talk about some of the protests that took place during these risings. We're going to look at a guy called Lewis, who was known as Lewis a Helwyd, or Lewis the Huntsman. Lewis, he was a butcher and a horse runner, and he worked as a haulier carting coal from mines in Llwydcoed to lime kilns in Penderyn. He was like a bold, large, charismatic man who was respected, fair and honourable, and lots of people in this community really liked him, just like me. And he built up, and just like me, he built up a mass debt. He built up a debt, and when the bailiffs came around to take his stuff, he was having none of it because he worked hard, and the only debt he built was trying to live. So he challenged the court, and he reached a compromise with the bailiffs that the bailiffs would only come and take a trunk from him. But the next day, however, on the 2nd of June, 1831, a giant angry crowd went to the shop that was selling his trunk and yanked it back. They were like, fuck this, Lewis is one of the boys.
Don't
you're not
fuck
having
with the
us drunk.
community.
Yeah.
Fuck
This
with
then
one of us, you
happened.
fuck with all of us.
Yeah, well, that did happen. They then went to every shop across Merthyr that was selling people's items taken by the courts and stealing it back. And this giant crowd eventually turned to their furious eyes away from the shops that were selling their stuff and instead on the bailiffs' houses. So they opted for the old taste of your own medicine theory and started ransacking the bailiff house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the one guy, Thomas Williams, who was a bailiff, he was the first house to be ransacked, and then all these other iron workers joined the crowd, and he's just getting a big swell of angry people.
I can imagine the glee at them going, "Don't take that! I worked hard for that. What are you doing?"
Yeah. Well, all of those magistrates and ironmasters and bailiffs were like, "Fuck." They and 70 special constables had to run to a pub to avoid this crowd that was growing, and the pub was called the Castle Inn. So when Chief Magistrate J.B. Bruce failed to persuade the crowd to disperse, they read the Riot Act. They read it in Welsh and English, but the crowd remained. And the Riot Act is that act where, do you know much about the Riot Act?
No, inform me, educate me.
So the act, if you Google it, the act allowed local officials to read a proclamation ordering illegally assembled groups of more than 12 people to disperse. So really, it's just
absolute weak fucking resistance to when people are kicking out. Look, you're not allowed to do
but
this. Then.
But what you can do then is arrest those who don't. So say if you're outside, so it now means it's against the law for you to be in that. So the crowds were like, okay. They decided to go to a guy called Joseph Coffin, who was the president of the Court of Requests, that place I said earlier, where the court would keep a record of everyone's. And they went to his house, they stormed the house, they destroyed all the records of everyone's debts, which I think is brilliant. And they could no longer legally charge those people with the records that were gone. And now the crowd had grown to 10,000 people. And it's believed they marched under the red flag for the first time. And you know that famous red communist socialist flag? It's usually has like a fist on it. It's like a hand raised to it, and it's.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's symbolic. It's symbolic with the socialist movement, but it's like the workers' flag, and this is the first time in history it had ever been used. In advance of this, though, the UK government had already called for military support to head to Merthyr. The order had gone a day before this, on the 1st of June, which implies that the government knew that Merthyr was on the brink of something big. So now these soldiers from the 93rd Regiment of Foot, they arrived from Brecon and found this giant army of workers surrounding the castle inn. So then when the army kind of got there, things had kind of got to this boiling point, and the crowd themselves decided to send some leaders, such as Lewis or Lewis Helwood, to detail the demands, which were they wanted to abolish the Court of Requests, they wanted higher wages, political reform, they were like dangerous chants of down with the king, which would have been classed as treason. They wanted a reduction in the price of bread. There was chants of bara neu waed, which translates as bread or blood, which is
bread
good.
or fucking blood.
And there was like signs of bread or blood. And they wanted a reduction in the cost of essential living and working equipment. So Lewis met with the ironmasters and the police, but he got turned down on all fronts. So Crawshay, that cruel ironmaster, he addressed the crowd from the Castle Inn with the High Sheriff, and he told everyone to go home and disperse. And the crowd were furious. They hated him anyway, and they hate the fact he thought he was above the law. So the crowd was enraged, and they tried to surround the soldiers, whilst Lewis called for the soldiers to be disarmed. The soldiers refused to step down and opened fire from within the Castle Inn. They took up shots from the windows, and they fired out onto the crowd, fired at men, women and children, and killed 24 people, including women and children. But during the struggle, 16 soldiers were wounded in the fight. By now, some of the crowd had also wrangled weapons from the soldiers, which meant the army had to abandon the Castle Inn and retreat to Penderyn. Not Penderyn, it's called Penderyn House. This now meant the workers were in charge of the town, and for 4 days, the magistrates, bailiffs and ironmasters were under siege at the rather fittingly named the Castle Inn.
Ironic.
Yeah. Isn't it ironic?
Not ironic. Is it ironic? It's not ironic.
No, when I was
fitting.
writing this, I wrote, isn't it ironic that the Castle Inn? Well, no, it's not ironic because the castle is meant to be used. So I changed it to fitting. Yeah. So we're both better. So now by the 4th of June, the armed insurrection was fully in place, and the only place for the authorities was at this Penderyn House, and things really shifted up a gear. The rioters had commandeered arms and explosives, they set up roadblocks, they formed guerrilla detachments, and they had banners capped with a symbolic loaf dyed in blood, or dyed in red to resemble blood. And those who had military experience had taken the lead in drilling the armed paramilitary formations and created an effective central command and communication system. So they literally turned Merthyr into a base.
Jesus.
It's crazy, man. Like, the government were the government kind of knew this was happening, so they were furious. So they even sent in more army to overpower and eliminate this giant threat. But the Merthyr mob were always one step ahead. They ambushed an army supply train that was being escorted by 40 of the Glamorgan Yeomanry, which was like a cavalry unit that was actually disbanded after this action because they were they came back again during the Second World War, but they got ambushed by civilians and overthrown.
There's real like parallel there between the kind of guerrilla tactics of old, isn't there? Sort of using your knowledge of the land and kind of like that's fucking mental.
Yeah. I didn't think of that, but they did it again then. The crowd ambushed another battalion. This time it was the Swansea Yeomanry. Yeomanry? I'm not very good at my words.
I know yeoman, isn't it? I think it's called.
Yeomanry.
I only know that because one time I made something called a yeoman's pudding. And, just to detract from the seriousness of this, but yeah, go
well,
ahead.
the old yeoman pudding boys, the crowd ambushed was the second lot from them. They were the Swansea yeoman pudding boys, who derived from Nice. And then they beat up a third relief force of 100 cavalry sent from Penderyn House themselves. So those were, they just on all fronts they were pushing back the actual army. They also sent messages to galvanise other workers across South Wales, and now strikes had started in northern Monmouthshire, Neath and the Swansea Valleys. So these riots had now reached their peak. All these other places were rioting and rising, but there was a shift. Lots of the town folks and families got really scared by what was happening, and they were really scared of what the government would do next and the implications that would follow such an uprising. So loads of families left, and those who stayed with the mob began to lose momentum as they wanted different things and didn't have a united front. And now it got to the 6th of June, and the crowd managed to organise another giant meeting, and they were getting around 15 to 20,000 members at Wine Common again. But the authorities preempted this mass protest and sent out the troops. The Riot Act was read once again, but this time they had 450 soldiers were sent to meet them with all their guns levelled, meaning they came out with their guns pointing at the crowd. And then the leaders of the rising, they fled. They thought, well, they're going to be first to get shot, so they scarpered, and the crowd panicked. So everyone kind of ran away, and they all ran to like different areas. I think lots of them ran to Penderyn Woods, which is where Dic Penderyn and all that stuff get their name from. Because they ran there. So after this, the Lewis and the other people had ran away to escape, and after a few days they got rounded up, and they were sent to Cardiff prison to await trial. And we haven't even mentioned Dic Penderyn yet.
I know, yeah, it's just a nice little prelude up to him.
Yeah, so this has been mostly about the Merthyr Rising, which is really sad because so Dic Penderyn, well, as you'll find out, he's actually called Richard Lewis, but he was accused. The reason he's famous is because he was accused of using a bayonet from a soldier's rifle to stab Private Donald Black, and that was in the very first part where I mentioned they were around that castle inn. Private Black's injuries, they weren't fatal, and he couldn't identify if it was either Lewis or Richard Lewis, so Dic Penderyn, or anybody else in the crowd. Nevertheless, at the conclusion of only a day-long trial on the 13th of July 1831, Mr. Justice Bossonquet and a jury of Cardiff Assizes, both Dick and Lewis were convicted and sentenced to death. Unlike with Lewis, there was no evidence that Dick played any substantial part in the rising at all. Lewis had his sentence commuted to transportation, which means he was sent off to prison in the colonies, largely thanks to the testimony of a special constable, John Thomas, who Lewis said shielded him from the rioters. The rest of the people of Merthyr were convinced that Dic Penderyn had no responsibility whatsoever to the stabbing, and more than 11,000 people at the time signed a petition demanding his release. Even the conservative Cambrian newspaper objected to it, who would have been all for this, the ironmasters.
Yeah, clamping down on bloody, so-called rioters and,
It was a Quaker ironmaster from Neath called Joseph Price who went on to console the two condemned men, and he was immediately convinced that Dic Penderyn's innocent and he had nothing to do with this. So he went to Merthyr to give evidence over this. He persuaded the trial judge that the sentence was wrong, and it was escalated to the Home Secretary to review. Now, the Home Secretary at the time was a guy called Lord Melbourne, and he was known for his severity and his hard attitude.
I was about to say, someone named Lord Melbourne sounds like he really understands the plight of a Welsh miner, so I'm sure he got off scot-free. Yeah.
Well, he did actually delay the execution for 2 weeks, but he refused to reduce the sentence despite pleas from not only the workers but also the Welsh establishment. It seems the execution occurred solely because Lord Melbourne wanted at least one rebel to die as an example. Shock horror, you got Home Secretary's a fucking vindictive cunt.
Yeah, funny that, isn't it? I've never heard that before, but yeah.
No. So, on August 13th, a month later after the trial, poor old Dick was hung outside Cardiff jail.
Yeah, I read it was basically where anyone familiar with Cardiff now is it's the entrance to the Cardiff Market from
St Mary's Street.
St Mary's, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the blue plaque loads of times. I used to work opposite it, and as you can find a blue plaque commemorating this like cruel act by the authorities. He was only 23, and his last words were "O Arglwydd dyma gamwedd," which in English is "Oh Lord, here is iniquity," which means like immoral or grossly unfair.
I read that as well. It was good. Those are pretty fucking good last words, considering you'd probably be shitting yourself. I know my last words would be or something like that.
I didn't do it!
I didn't do it, my lord.
I didn't do it, my lord. Please don't make me do it, my lord.
Oh, please, I'll be good, my lord. I swear to God, I'll be good.
I'll be good. I'll go for it, my lord. I promise you that,
Let me go back to Wales, won't you, Lord?
Oh, please, Lord. I know I'm in Wales, but let me go back to Merthyr.
Please, my lord.
Oh, please, my lord.
But,
let me go back to Merthyr Tydfil.
Yes. To say, Lord, this is iniquity. Is
Arglwydd
pretty badass.
Gamwedd. I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's a
Good
anyway.
lad.
I'll quickly wrap this up so I don't yap on for too long. But he, thousands upon thousands accompanied his body through the Vale of Glamorgan to his grave, and apparently a load of churches refused to accept his body. Now I couldn't
Very
figure
Christian.
out. Well, yeah, I know. I couldn't figure out if it was out of anger at the authorities or in reality because they didn't want their church to become martyrdom or a place to inspire rebelliousness, so they refused to let him in. And then in 1874, a man named Iantor Parker confessed on his deathbed in the United States to Evan Evans that he stabbed Black, the guy who Dic Penderyn had been accused of stabbing, and then fled to America fearing capture by the authorities, thus exonerating
I
Dic
read
Penderyn.
that as well.
Stop saying you read that.
I read it, alright.
Another man named James Abbott, who testified against Dic Penderyn at the trial, also later admitted lying under oath, and he was renowned for having a vendetta against poor Dick. There's been a few petitions to get Dick pardoned posthumously, but it hasn't got enough signatures to trigger a parliamentary debate. So maybe we can galvanise our listeners and start a petition and get our boy.
I was going to say, I'd love to think that would work, but my cynical little heart would think even if we got like fucking, a million signatures.
You need 10,000 to get it discussed. No, because even
if we got it discussed, I don't think fucking anything would come
a
of
Welsh
it.
politician tried to get it discussed, and he even, as a MP couldn't get it done. I'll quickly run through what happened after this. So that Truck Act, you remember I said earlier that truck system where they wouldn't pay you. The Truck Act was passed, so that means while the passing the Truck Act meant you were no longer allowed to use that as a system of paying your staff. And they don't say it's a direct consequence of the risings, but the government had to make these practices of paying workers tokens illegal, so you're no longer allowed to do it. And it was a result of the government's concern of the prevalence of the truck system that abused the working class. So it was like a positive outcome from this rising, and they didn't want to link it directly to this because they didn't want to show that, like, if you if you done.
Exactly. If you actually push hard enough, you'll get results. Exactly.
But it kind of this happened very shortly after. Another thing that happened was unions were stamped out. In the immediate fallout, the workers were forced to give up their union. The ironmaster, led by Joseph John Guest, decided to. He was the one who I mentioned earlier. He was quite nice in some areas. He decided on the removal of the unions. So workers at Dowlais and Plymouth were told to either give up the union or lose their jobs, and those who chose to stay with the union were locked out of work, which eventually led to poverty and starvation. So they left with no choice but to return to work. I haven't read up when the unions came back in, but for a while this really did stamp it out. And then ironmasters. So while Crashaw was partly blamed for his role in the risings, he was blamed by the UK authorities and the Welsh. The authorities didn't punish them, but they were partly to blame. But they decided to really punish the people who rose up against them to show that violence would never be allowed by giving them violence. So it's allowed if you're the authorities. Parliamentary representation. So like I said earlier, Merthyr never had a representation in Parliament. But after this, the first representatives in Merthyr in Parliament was Josiah Guest, that guy I mentioned was the ironmaster. And then there was something called the Reform Act that was supported by the workers and the working class, and that gave the industrial and political leaders around them power to like change their working conditions and stuff like that. So from this rising, the Reform Act came about, and it was a big part of how the working class could get better rights as workers. And then finally, one thing that came from it was Welsh identity and working class history. So the industrial and rural protests in England and Wales, such as the Merthyr Risings, drove various like different outcomes, like I just said. And whilst the Risings failed in some of its aims, it became a significant part of the history of the Welsh working class. And
massive not first step, you know what I mean? Massive step forward, isn't it? You know, like you said, like unions busted and stuff like that, but the fact that you even got representation and absolutely, and it does, you know, whatever the government would try to have you think, it worked. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It absolutely worked.
And also, so with Dic Penderyn dying, he died as a martyr, and his death further embittered relations between the Welsh workers and the authorities, and it strengthened the trade union movement and Charterism in the run-up to the Newport Rising, which I don't know anything about, so it's probably one we should add to the list. And cover
definitely one to cover, I reckon so.
So that's, sorry I talked for most of that. And
mate, I was enthralled.
I just found it mad interesting that like a town fought the government and took over the town for like 8 days.
And it seemed like they were winning from most of it as well. Because I always knew about Dic Penderyn in the sense I knew he got hung, but I didn't know all the backstory, and I knew there's outrage about him being hung, but didn't really know how I feel a bit bad now because I've often made an offhanded joke about Merthyr and its residents, but you know what, boys, big respect now.
Oh, I love Merthyr. I went for I've been there for work a few times. I think the people are fucking class, and I went there for I won't say a political protest once.
To be fair, one of my favourite people in work is from Merthyr as well, so it's, you know.
Yeah, I think it does get.
It's just jokes, mate. It's just jokes.
In COVID, it had like a really high COVID rate, and the BBC did an article about it being. It's because it's ingrained within the community to be cutchy, to be part of it, you know, to hug each other, to say hi to each other, and it's so
it's such a like community sort of attitude there, isn't it? You know, everyone's mate kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it's a bit like Liverpool in that sense. And Liverpool always class themselves as Scouse, not English, and they don't like the Royal. You know, they see themselves as very much Scouse. I think people at Merthyr have a real strong identity, and
there's places like that in England, like my granddad was a Yorkshireman, and he always used to say, if you used to tell him he was English, he used to kick off and be like, I'm not English, I'm a Yorkshireman.
I think that's what the English struggle with a bit more than Wales. Like, Wales gets to identify as Wales, and whereas in England, the south of England is so massively different to the north of England, and the people on the north of England don't feel represented like how people in the south do. So,
now, this is a proper use of the word irony, is that back in sort of medieval times and pre-medieval times, Wales was all disjointed like that. You wouldn't say you were Welsh, you'd say you were a man of Gwynedd, or you were a man of Powys or Deheubarth or whatever. Yeah. And England was a bit more of a united front, even though they had the different sort of areas and whatnot. And now it's just sort of switched off, and I would hazard a guess that, you know, a North Walian and a South Walian would both consider themselves very much Welsh.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas, you know, a Yorkshireman, Liverpudlian, and someone from London might not see eye to eye in that respect. You know?
Like I get no North Wales and South Wales people sometimes. I don't.
We butt heads.
Sometimes I just can't be asked to think you're Welsh, mate. Chill out. But at least you have this national identity, and I think it's become stronger and stronger. Whereas, like you said, people from different parts of England don't feel like a connected England. Like there isn't like that common thread between the south and our common thread in Wales is we call ourselves Welsh. In England, you don't have that common thread of like feeling like you're part of the same thing.
There's a definite disconnect.
Yeah.
100%.
But I hope this was more of a serious one, but I hope people enjoyed it.
An important one, I'd say.
Yeah, especially because like we weren't that asked about doing it. I think it was on our list, and like I didn't really have emotions either way. I don't think, but when I was reading about it, I thought, fuck, man, it's like it's annoying how things haven't changed so much. So, you know, you got doctors striking now, and everyone's striking now because all they want is they just want a fair share.
Yeah. This is gonna sound preachy from me now, like I'm an old fucking granddad or whatever. But you do, if you don't look at like the history of stuff, you'll never know how things have changed or not changed, really, sort of thing. So like you said, you're doomed to repeat it. And like you said, you see echoes of the same thing happening kind of now, don't you, with people just being taken advantage of and not being paid enough to fucking live a half decent life.
it's frustrating, but maybe we should pick up arms. we'll.
So next week, March on Parliament, right? We're all doing it.
And see you there, lads.
Yeah.
The podcast rising, the pod rising, the pod does a river.
It's all right. You don't have to say it. I know what you meant.
Yeah, you know what I meant. My eyes, I've just got so hay fever. It's like that phone call with work earlier. I've just zoomed out.
Oh, hay fever. I've got a lot going on at the moment, actually. So don't blame me.
My dad doesn't like me. All right, should we knock that on the head and get ready for the second record?
Yeah, that's why not. We're doing a double bubble tonight.
So expect the next episode to be a lot more drunker.
A little bit more boozy.
Yeah. I didn't drink much at all during that, to be fair. So
mate, you two be gabbing off.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Bloody Merthyr Tydfil this, bloody Penderyn that. But obviously, to clean this episode out now, to end it on a high note, I just want to say thank you, Dic Penderyn, top lad. Well done, man.
If you could drop us a follow on Instagram, because we're trying to build it up a little bit, and I'm going to get better at posting on there, and we might do some live videos of us, not live videos, what's called videos of us, clips from the show. And if you follow, it's Tales for Wales Pod, I think. Yeah, Tales 4 Wales Podcast, and you'll find it on there. It's Tales for Wales 4 on YouTube and Twitter. So get around all of them. And as always, if you drop us a 5-star or send it on to your mates, we'd fucking love that. You know what I mean? I'd love that.
Muchos apreciado, my friends. And give us little suggestions, things you like, things you don't like, and we're doing better at taking criticism. So by all means, share what you think.
Yeah, much we like all the correspondence. Some nice messages of late, and it warms our cockles.
Oh, we always screenshot them and send them to each other, don't we? It always makes us feel nice.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, all. See you in a bit.
Cheers, lads. And
I escaped and they got caught. I became a highwayman. Was daylight robbery? I was no Prince Charming. Nothing dandy about me. The truth is, I was violent and with my good mate Matt King, robbed travellers at gunpoint, money, watches, anything. My horse, it wasn't called Black Bess, although that's what you